Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we dive into partner stories centered around their experience building AI-powered applications for the Atlassian marketplace. I'm going to be your host today. My name is Philip Braddock, and I'm the portfolio management lead for Atlassian Ventures, which is the corporate venture capital arm of Atlassian. The three companies here today are part of our Atlassian Ventures portfolio. And before we get really started, I just want to go over a few admin or housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and it will be shared out afterwards. It is an interactive session, and so we certainly welcome questions from the audience. You're more than welcome to drop your questions in the Q&A in the chat for Zoom, and we will monitor those as the session progresses. So let's dive into what we're here to do today. We've got an awesome panel of Atlassian Ventures portfolio companies, as I mentioned, and the three folks joining us today are founders from Spinach.io, AppForge.ai, and LaunchNotes, respectively, and each of whom have recently built and launched AI applications for the Atlassian marketplace. And so I'm going to kick things off by allowing everyone to introduce themselves. Yov, if you don't mind coming off and giving an introduction.
Hey everyone, I'm Yov. I'm a co-founder and VP of Product and Engineer at Spinach.io. At Spinach.io, we're building the AI project manager. What that means is we join your meetings, we help facilitate them. We then summarize that meeting, we connect it to all of your Jira tickets, we recommend tickets after the fact, and then we ultimately help you be more successful in working with your product management tool. From there, we send it to Confluence and ultimately make teams a lot more successful. We're backed by Atlassian, as Phil mentioned, but we're also backed by YC and Zoom. And in the last 6 months, we've become an AI company. What that means is we've become every other company out there. And so I'm excited to talk about AI and what that means. And yeah, excited for all of you to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yo. Hubert, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I'm the co-founder and co-creator of the AppForge.ai. So our product is Doctor for Jira. And hello from Berlin, Germany. So we have created a tool last year and we won the Codeguys 2022 that will help the admins and users of Jira Cloud to make an assessment of their instance. We are using AI, so for analysis, and you get a nice report where you can find what are the problems or challenges you have in your application. And I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you, Hubert. And last but not least, Tyler, would you mind doing a quick intro and telling folks a little bit about LaunchNotes?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Tyler Davis. I'm the CEO and technical co-founder of LaunchNotes. We build a platform for connecting product teams with their customers through communication. We do that with really smart AI-powered changelog and roadmaps. And we recently built an AI-powered application for Jira Marketplace called Gravity, which does zero-shot classification for Jira issues to power the automatic categorization of feedback that is managed within Jira. Thank you for having me. Excited to chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate the quick round of introductions. We are going to dive right in. And one last housekeeping thing, just as far as sort of the run of show here. I'm going to present our panelists here with 5 or 6 questions that we've prepared to get the conversation going, after which we will open it up for Q&A. So I think as I mentioned at the top, and as I believe as Helen just put in the chat, please do feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat, and we will monitor those and sort of bring them up as the panel continues. But let's get started with our first question. Guys, like many companies, earlier this year, Atlassian announced its commitment, to innovation in the AI space with the introduction of what we call Atlassian Intelligence. Everyone joining us today, as we've mentioned, has their own AI journeys, and everyone has been early adopters of AI to enhance their products, especially their Atlassian marketplace apps. I'd love to first kick things off by hearing everyone's philosophical perspective on AI, well before we talk about anything tactical or engineering, and the role that AI plays in the functionality of your apps. We're going to go in the order this time of the introductions. Yov, would you mind sort of giving an overview of how Spinach looks at AI and how you think about AI as a collaborative feature?
Absolutely. So, I think AI is an interesting new buzz, and I think it's important. If we look back at when SaaS was starting to get going, it was kind of a new thing, the whole concept of the cloud. I remember when I was consulting back when people were afraid. They're like, oh, you're going to put stuff in the cloud. That's terrifying. And I think we're kind of experiencing a very similar thing. And I think we're going to see that evolution happen too, where, you know, AI and the cloud is going to be synonyms. You're not going to say, wow, I'm building a cloud-based app. That's no longer going to be a thing. It's kind of an expectation. If you're not in the cloud, I think that's a problem. And I think that's the same concept with AI. It's just a native functionality that every application will have to adopt and figure out how to use it. And so for us, what that means is we actually leverage the conversation that's happening in meeting, because that's where kind of a lot of the information, a lot of the collaboration happens. And so we take that, we sliced it up, we dice it, and then we enrich it with a lot of the data that comes from Jira, such as the tickets and what's in the tickets, to then get a much more holistic view of what's going on with the team to ultimately serve that up. So we're trying to ultimately take that role of someone on the team who is listening in on the meeting and saying, oh, wait, where are we on this ticket? What are we doing? Oh, yeah, hey, can you create a ticket for this other thing? Someone has to do that. And we want to eliminate that job from people so that they can really just focus on, well, how do I get this work done, as opposed to collaborating and using it. And so AI has been a great accelerant for that vision, because you can ultimately take that information and actually make a decision like someone who is a product manager or a project manager or an engineer can do, and you can reason with it. And that's really ultimately the game changers. Think about AI as another human that you can put into any situation. What do you want to give them the training? Just like someone who joins your team, you're going to train them on what you want them to do, and then you can actually set them loose to do that. And so I think that's kind of the magic of AI, and like really figuring out how to use it in your specific use case.
Awesome. Thanks, Yov. Hubert, I'm going to go over to you. Philosophically, you know, how does AppForge think about AI, especially in the Atlassian marketplace?
Yeah, so it's a huge change for everyone. So I can start with the statement of European Commission that 2 years ago said, we are entering the 5th industrial revolution. So the 4th one was centered on Internet of Things, on AI. And now with all these nice goods, we are entering to totally new era. So I'm always explaining to friends of mine, what is AI? Why do we need it? Should we be afraid of that? And I'm explaining that to my mother, to my wife, to all my coworkers and other customers. Listen, so in the past, when you look back, every director, every president, vice president, C-level employee had their own assistant. And they did for them a lot of stuff. So like conducting research, taking notes, providing brief summaries of the meetings that they could not join. Now, what if I will tell you that each of you can have such an assistant, and I will give you back 10, 20, 30, 40 hours per month to use as spending time with family, doing sport, socializing. And that's how it's about AI. So each of us will get another person, or AI, artificial intelligence, which will be your assistant, which will give you the data. But still, you need to process the data and take decision based on this data. So I use personally on the daily basis ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, Google Translate, language tool, and all others that are based on AI. And I also use Doctor for Jira. So in the past, I've been in the Atlassian environment for the last 11 years. I still remember Jira version 3, Confluence version 2, and I hated all my life doing housekeeping, data governance, checking. And when I could do that, when the users went for the Christmas break, and then you can finally clean the instance because there were no many requests. And I said, okay, I hate doing that. It can be automated. And what if I will create my own tool? So because that tool that I created for my own need. And then I said, okay, let's apply to Code guys, and we won. That's why I'm here. So I want to give the other administration of the Jira cloud currently we are working on, so maybe on the data center next year or this year product that can give you time back, and you can do more important stuff than this automated task. So AI will be your own assistant like all the directors or the president of United States had all their life, just in few clicks.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Hubert. And to round us out, Tyler, how do you and your team sort of not necessarily implement, we'll get to that in a moment, but how do you guys think about and talk about AI?
I love, Yov, what you said about it is a bit of a buzz. I do think we're indexing pretty hard on this revolution right now. I think the reality is that AI has some really, really solid strengths, and it has a lot of weaknesses too. I think the idea of like building an assistant that can do a lot of things is novel and aspirational at this point. I think the reality is that in order to get something that approximates an assistant, you have to do some hacking. And I think it's cool, and there's some cool things and some cool innovations happening, but I think we're still a ways out from that. And so where I think it's really powerful and where we can see a lot of gains is really through kind of enhancing productivity and really around NLP tasks, natural language processing. And with LaunchNotes, we talk to a lot of product teams all over the world. And for product teams at scale, one of the main problems that they have is handling feedback, customer feedback. I worked at Atlassian before this, and one of the major problems Atlassian had was managing their customer feedback with hundreds of thousands of customers constantly bringing feature requests and bug reports and everything through. And they have teams that manage and triage that feedback, and that's consistent throughout the industry. And that kind of work can be done really well by the current iterations of AI. And so that's what we built. We built a tool called Gravity that takes feedback. It takes any kind of text content, and it looks at your labels in your Jira instance, and it automatically applies the correct labels with accuracy. And then on that, you can build automations, you can build workflows. And we're really just thinking about it. It's like, we're not creating an entirely new job or replacing a job. We're enhancing your job, enhancing your ability to be effective with your job. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate that. I think that's a great way to kind of set the tone for the rest of the conversation. Next question for the panelists. AI tools available to developers have come quite a long way in the past few years, to say nothing of the past few quarters. How has each of your companies seen AI progress, and what useful tips for building might you be able to share with the audience? Let's actually do reverse order. Tyler, let's do a little bit of a snake order here. I'll sort of let you take this one first.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually we've been using AI in our product for a while, a little bit before kind of the transformer GPT ideas hit mainstream. And we started using sentiment analysis and doing some very early classification stuff within our product. But once GPT hit mainstream, once OpenAI became readily available and Hugging Face became a thing, the accessibility to much more robust tools was obviously available to everybody. And so what we've seen is, obviously adding the ability to leverage generative AI, but more importantly, this idea of zero-shot classification without having to pre-train a model on existing data to have like solid results. And so that's been a huge level up for us, and it's helped us just be able to provide solid AI and that kind of automated classification to more customers at a more affordable price.
Great, thank you. Again, sticking with our reverse order here, Hubert, I'll go to you on this one. Same question, please.
Yeah, so as we can see, so the environment, it's never been such an environment that is changing so often and so much. So every day you can see new services, new tools that are powered by AI. There are new algorithms that are created. So for people that are starting with that, playing around with AI, I have always recommendation. think about the whole concept, but start small. In AppForge.ai, what we did at the beginning was asking some other friends, hey, that I knew that are already trying with AI, how I should start. So finding the knowledge. And then I found multiple. So we did together with other co-founders the list of 5-10 services that are giving the AI possibility. In that time, it was 2 years back, ChatGPT was not that open to everyone, or it was pretty expensive. So I started to play with like natural language processing tools like NLP Cloud. I also check like Google algorithms, like for the translation or language recognition or like similarities. Of course, when you get deeper into the topic, you can move always step forward. So then we started to play with the Python packages or frameworks like NumPy or Pandas and all these kind of algorithms. Of course, what will be the challenging is about verifying the outcome, because that's the nature of AI, that you cannot have to. So it's really rare that twice you will have the same answer. Of course, there are some cases, but also that algorithm learns, so it changes the answer and so on. So as an example, if you put the same question to ChatGPT, you will never get twice the same answer, unless it's like a super specific question about, like, for example, like about the date or something. So start with what is in the market and get familiar and play with it. It's like learning how to play on guitar. You start with the one song, then more songs, and then you get more familiar and familiar. It's with everything, like with learning about coding, new language. Start small, use the services, then play around with more advanced stuff. And that's how we did in our case.
Awesome, thank you. And to round us out, Yov, same question, any useful tips for folks who are sort of, just thinking about or maybe have been thinking about getting started building?
Yeah, I think the biggest evolution this year is AI is accessible. I think what's been interesting to see is it's become way more accessible. You don't have to be an ML engineer. You don't have to know how to stand up an instance and leverage all the new hardware. You just hit an API. And not only that, it's even easier. You don't even have to know how to use APIs. You just go into a playground and you type in whatever the heck you want and you get an outcome. And so that's really my recommendation. Just like Hubert said, it's all about keeping it simple. Find something small and go there. And so in my mind, I like to think about it, you've got the concept of the MVP. To me, that's evolved to the minimum viable prompt. And so really you try and kind of look at it and say, what am I trying to do? And then you go in there, you go into Playground and you start playing around with it. You ask a simple question, start super small. If you want to take a Jira ticket and let's say write all of the details associated with it, like let's say acceptance criteria. Just start there. Just say, okay, here's a Jira ticket. Give me the acceptance criteria. Start super small and see what it gives you. And then you start to see, wait a minute, okay, it's missing some stuff. So how do I enrich that? How do I add a little bit more? And then really go until you find something that works. And you really don't have to productize or put anything into production. Really, most of the work that I'm doing is in Playground, just exploring new ideas, feeding new context, playing around until I find something that seems to kind of work. And then you work through like validating and testing it. But most of that work is just an MVP and just trying to answer one question and start one question at a time. I think that's the easiest way to get going.
Awesome, thank you guys, that's great. We're gonna keep moving here, especially for the sake of having time on the back half for live Q&A. Next question, despite there being a lot of talk of AI, it is still a relatively new space, and I think you've all addressed that even in some of your opening answers here. But could you share some of the unexpected challenges you've encountered while building AI into your app or your apps, and how you overcame them? This time, Hubert, let's start with you.
Of course, we challenged a lot of problems, or let's say issues or challenges. So one of the biggest challenge was how to verify that the algorithm that I use give me the proper data. So the proper outcome. So let's say you have your own test scenarios and so on. But then when you install first time on the client environment, you cannot really predict what AI will give you. Because as I said before, so that's the nature of AI. It's learning, changing. and never gives twice the same answer. So for example, when you have a demo with your client, you said, okay, probably you will get this, but you are never sure if you will get this or that. So you need to be prepared and you need to train people. Also, what I challenge the most, maybe it's the nature of living in Germany, because people are super scared about sending their data to AI, right? So when I started from the beginning, I had my own endpoint and I wanted to send the data to my endpoint. And they said, hey, no, it's your domain, how you verify the stuff. That was one of the biggest challenges. Then I said, okay, what if I will send to this service? So some of the clients said, okay, that's fine. So you need to always discuss about where to send the data, what to do with the data, but there will be another discussion later on about that. So I don't want to go that deep in the topic, but taking care of customer data to process that and give them the outcome, it's one of the biggest challenge that we encounter, all of the AI creator encounter right now, because you need to double sure that there will be no leakage of the stuff, but without providing the data, how we can train the algorithms, because that's the nature, that more the data algorithm has, that the better accurate answer it will provide us. So we need to find the golden middle between sending data, training algorithms, and not exposing that to the broader world. And yeah, that was one of the biggest challenges that I had.
Great, thank you. Yo, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, I think, Hubert covered it, which is guaranteeing the outcome that you want is tough. And so, I think one of the biggest challenges in guaranteeing the right outcome is context. And so, that's one of the challenges that we've encountered is if you think about a meeting and you think about this conversation, you've got context windows available to you. And one of the challenges is it's not true that if you just feed it all the context that it will give you the best answer, because then it's a little bit overwhelmed. Models haven't come that way where you could just give it everything. And so one of the challenges is figuring out what is the right minimal amount of context that's just enough, but not too much. And so I think that's really been one of the challenges. And most of the applications are using RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. And so in that, you've got your prompt, like the example I gave of I want acceptance criteria. Well, if you just ask it, you're probably going to get a radically different answer almost every time. But if you start to give it information about that ticket and about the team and about what they're working on and all of these different things, you've got to find what is actually relevant to be able to make a decision. And so that's really where a lot of the time is spent, is figuring out what context is the right context. And then how do you at scale do that? And so things like leveraging semantic search and leveraging hybrid search and using ADA to embed your results, like all of these things just require a lot of fine tuning. And so you just kind of have to play around, and you got to keep trying different contexts and different information until you find what works best for you. And I think that the big learning is don't assume that you give it all the context, you're going to get the best answer. Like that, that is a really unfortunate non-truth that requires a lot of fine tuning.
Thanks, Joe. And to round out this question, Tyler, challenges LaunchNotes has encountered early on?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what Hubert and Yov mentioned are all very similar to what we've experienced. I think the one kind of like fundamental challenge that is just, especially with GPT and transformer stuff, is it's, as an engineer, as a software engineer, you're very used to like structure and like typed inputs and outputs, and this is like as far from that as possible. It's like you're putting a text input in and you're getting just like unstructured text out. And so managing that and wrangling that into something that is structured takes some practice, and so that's been a learning experience for us. On the other side of that, from an infrastructure and operational perspective, we manage our models internally, and so having to learn how to scale those effectively with usage, and just balance that with the cost of doing so has been a big challenge, and that's just something that we had to learn over time. That we're very much still in that journey, but I'd say that's been on the other side of just more of like managing GPUs and compute has been an interesting challenge for sure.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's try to hit one or two more of these questions, and then we will jump in straight to the audience's questions. This is certainly, I think, top of mind. I've seen some of this already in the chat, different variations of this question. But collectively, I think we know privacy and data protection are top priorities. How did you incorporate responsible AI into your design and implementation to ensure that your app provides a strong foundation of trust from the outset? Tyler, why don't we have you go first on this one?
Sure. Yeah, this is something that, and it gets back to kind of the buzz thing going on right now. There's a lot of excitement around OpenAI and Anthropic and Cohere and these closed source models that are, people are not, they don't have a ton of trust in them. So we made the decision early on, especially for our Jira marketplace application, to choose a model and host it ourselves. That all the data was managed by us to minimize the surface area for just third parties and data processing. And I think that's the main thing for us. We're going to continue to go down that path and invest in that, because as we've learned and we've talked to existing customers and folks that are interested in it, they're really sensitive to that, and they're really sensitive to having their incredibly sensitive intellectual property being shared with third parties that they're not having a direct relationship with.
Thanks, Tyler. Yov, how is Spinach thinking about sort of privacy by design?
Yeah, this is interesting. About, I think, 5 or 6 months ago, as AI was really starting to gain traction, we realized right away, when we were like, hey, we're building this AI tool, what's the first question? Well, what are you doing about privacy? And so we invested right away. We hadn't gone through SOC 2 yet at that time. And so we said, okay, in the age of AI, privacy, security, having an audit, all of those things are really, really critical. And so we said, hey, we're gonna like kick off and do that right away. So that way we're kind of setting the foundation. And I think that's really critical. I will say, I think that what we saw 5 or 6 months ago, which was very similar to you're putting stuff in the cloud. I think that we're seeing people start to say, okay, I get it. I think ChatGPT early on scared the heck out of people with that Samsung article where they're training on the data. And I think that, these big models and these big companies have realized, okay, we've got to change how we're doing it. And so I think people are starting to understand it a bit more and how the training is done. And, in most cases, the enterprise agreements that you have with OpenAI or Anthropic or anything like that don't allow them to train. And so, I think diving in, making sure that you have the answers, making sure that how you're handling customer data, how you're encrypting it, how you're managing access, like that's a really important thing to do up front, because people are expecting that, especially with AI. It's a lot scarier. The level of data, the level of information shared is a lot more, because that's where the context comes from. Like without context, you're not going to get a good answer. And so you got to look at some sensitive information. So I would say, take a look at what you're doing for compliance. It's not super hard. Like, yes, it's a little bit pricey. It takes, a couple months, but it's well worth the trust that it will build by kind of going through these processes.
Thanks, Yov. I think real quick, in my own words, and I wonder if you agree, I think it sounds like what you're saying is kind of the short-term trade-off between, going a little bit slower in the beginning in order to then go very, very fast and accelerate longer term.
For sure. Absolutely. Go a little slower. And honestly, it's not that meaningful. I think it sounds really intense, but you can do it. It's not super challenging, and it just sets you up in the right way. Like it gets you going, gets you thinking about it, and that's going to pay dividends down the road as you build up.
Awesome. Thanks, Yo. Hubert, same question to round us out on this one.
Yeah, so exactly the same point of view as was already mentioned. So especially in Europe, in Germany, we are super compliant to General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. And if you break it, it's based on your revenue. So if you do not spend the time and effort on making information on the security of the information of your clients, then let's say your startup will fail, because sooner or later somebody will knock to your door. So I'm always saying that it's not anymore 1969 when Dennis Ritchie with Ken Thompson were creating Unix in their garage on their machines. So no, that time is gone. You cannot just have your own machine in your living room or your working room and run the API that will collect the data from your customer. No, that time is gone, because there are a lot of the companies and hackers that are using AI to get this data. So what I always recommend to the other people that we would like to start with playing with Atlassian Marketplace, but also with AI. So just use what is in the market in the best protected way. So use like any Google cloud, like Google Cloud, AWS Cloud, public clouds overall. They are super restricted. They are like bunch of information and security engineers and cybersecurity engineers that they can ensure that the service that you will buy or from them, it will be in the secure manner. Of course, it's easier when you build an app in the Forge, of course, because Forge is Atlassian platform. But for the processing of AI, you need to send the data and store it somewhere. So I would recommend as a take with you information. Do not establish your own data center unless you will grow that much that you will have your InfoSec department. Start with just buying in the secure way the services that are on the market, and that's what we do, right? We also started recently cooperation with University of Technology in Wrocław, with Cathedra of Programming and AI, that can support us with the journey about not only using and tuning the algorithms, but also training with the customer data, these algorithms. And that's another step on the level of our company. So, and yeah, that's what I would recommend to all of you when you are started to play with AI and building your own apps.
Great, thank you. We're going to switch a little bit from builder mode to, let's call it, or maybe from product mode to business mode, so to speak. And let's put a kind of our go-to-market hats on and our distribution hats on. Coming up with an innovative idea for an app or AI features for an app is one part of the process, call it half the journey. And the other half is actually producing an app that's ready to be sold or brought to market, notably on the Atlassian Marketplace, and really adds value for real-world customers. Each of you have successfully done that. You've taken your MVP and launched it on the Atlassian Marketplace, all the apps of which, that you mentioned are live today. What did that go-to-market process look like for each of you? And can you share any takeaways as you did sort of switch from, builder mode to go-to-market or distribution mode? Again, let's try to mix it up a little bit. Hubert, why don't you go first on this one, please?
Okay, so story of AppForge was super interesting, right? So let's say that I had an idea of automating the stuff that I'm doing for daily business, so data governance and the health check on the housekeeping of the instance. And I said, okay, I would like to build a tool for that. And with two other enthusiasts, or three in total, we said, okay, let's build together the app that can help myself. And then maybe we'll release to the market, maybe somebody else would be also interested. So we started to create the app in end of 2021. And then in 2022, we had an idea. Okay, so we have like, let's say the first version beta, and then the Codegeist appeared. And we said, okay, let's apply to Codegeist and let's see what other people think about our idea, because we built for ourselves. We have over 50 years of experience as Atlassian consultants. So we knew what the problems you encounter every day. And we applied, and surprisingly, we won the first prize. And I said, wow, so it means that that kind of app is also needed for other people. So, and it was super surprising for us. And it was super excited because, okay, said, oh, wow. So now it's even tougher because we should polish the app and release to the market that everybody can use it. And that was also challenging, right? Because then we said, okay, to push it to the market, probably you need to create some entity. Then you need to do all this paperwork and so on and so forth. But I always saying that our mission and vision is to focus on the product that can help other people simplify their life as a Jira administrator, consultant, or just a user. So that's our ultimate goal. And we found out that if you do something with passion and you like your product, or you're excited, because I'm super excited about Doctor for Jira, because I can see already how much it can reduce the effort of stuff that I don't like to do. So, and I said, okay, the business will come along. So if you have a product and the product is nice, it can usually sell by itself. So that was our vision. But of course, the life is life. So it's not that easy, but if you focus on the product, the other things will go easier for you. So when I wake up every morning and I know, okay, I need to do this, that, and I know that there's something has some value added, not only for me, but for other people, it's easier to solve any challenges that I encounter. So, and
Great.
That's why I'm also here, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Hubert. Tyler, let's go to you next, and we'll round out with you. Tyler, any sort of go-to-market advice?
You got to get in front of your users, I think. We obviously LaunchNotes existed before the Gravity app was a thing, but we built Gravity. We talked to a bunch of product managers and Jira admins along the way to figure out exactly what they needed. And then once we launched, we went to the Atlassian team conference and got it in front of as many people as possible. And we've really just been working on those relationships ever since then. I think it's really just about being as close to the user as possible and learning from them and trying to provide as much value to them as possible and being focused in doing that. So we've just really been doing that.
Thanks, Tyler. Yov, rounding us out.
Yeah, I think, in the new age of AI, kind of building an app is no longer as challenging as it used to be. And so any idea that you have, assume that 100 other people have that same idea and will build it probably just as fast as you. And so I think the evolution now and what will make teams really successful is figuring out the go-to-market motion. And I think the Atlassian marketplace is a really great place to anchor, especially if you're building functionality on Jira, right? Like the users of Jira are product managers, they're developers, and a whole gambit of other. And these are your first movers, first adopters. And so really understanding what are their pain points, like having a ton of user interviews and understanding like, what are they saying? If they're using your product, what is it about your product that, like, how do they describe it? How do they kind of conceptualize what challenges it solves for them? And then really leveraging that as how you market it. I think that's really what a big differentiator now is really knowing what your message is and understanding and tailoring it to your exact audience so that it's easy to understand. And they could read it and say, oh, wow, I have this problem and it makes sense that this app does it. And so really focusing on what, from a marketplace perspective, what is your message? What is your website that people are going to go to and look at? All of those things are really, really important. And all of that should be informed by talking to your users. And so that's really what is going to differentiate successful AI companies from not as successful AI companies. It's not a, if you build it, they will come. I wish that was true, but unfortunately, you really got to figure out your message and your go-to-market and spend a good amount of time and make sure that is informed by users versus what you kind of made up on the whiteboard or what you asked GPT to write for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Yov. I appreciate it. All right, everyone. One last question that we have for the panel, and then we will round out the last 15 minutes with questions from the audience. Collaboration tools and workflows are always evolving, but especially today, they're evolving incredibly rapidly. How do each of you think AI will transform the way teams work in the coming years? And what opportunities and challenges do you anticipate for developers in this space? And I'm going to challenge each of you to keep your minute to about one answer so we can have about 15 minutes for at least 15 minutes, excuse me, for questions from the panel. Why don't we keep the sort of front to back idea here? You can kick us off on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI will really revolutionize all jobs. And, I think it's coming. There was a Gartner review from a couple years ago that said project management is going to be eliminated. 80% of it will be eliminated by AI. And I think that same report will apply to most jobs. And so really figuring out, okay, where do you have a unique experience and knowledge that you can leverage AI on top of your unique skill set to automate something? I think that's where you'll be able to find some space. And, the challenges are going to be, how do you figure out the best way to do it? The differentiator is going to be who's going to have the AI that knows the best how to do a certain job or a certain workflow. And that's what you've got to spend all your time in trying to figure out is your unique use case. Don't go after things that you don't know. That's a losing battle. Just, if you're really good at something, take that and figure out how to use AI to give that to the world.
Love it. Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, as I touched on before, I think productivity is going to see like the biggest gains from AI, and I think we're seeing that today. And you take, workflows and automation. I think there's going to be just an additive function in the short term in terms of the flexibility and the ease of use in establishing and maintaining those kind of workflows with AI. And so, I have a hard time seeing like, too far in the future in terms of what's going to happen. The advances we've seen in the last year and a half have kind of blown my mind, to be perfectly honest. But I think what we see today and what we can do today is really think about how we can leverage these really point kind of like areas of our workflows and in the tools and in our day-to-day, and make those and improve those and make yourselves more efficient. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Awesome, thanks. And last but not least, Hubert, quick answer to round us out, and then as I've mentioned, I definitely want to get to some of the questions from the audience.
Yeah, so for sure it will change the way how are we working. So the first revolution was done by coronavirus, so asynchronous work and working from home. And then we encountered the problem with collaboration within teams, within the company, and so on. And now with AI, we will bridge the gaps that are appearing there. And especially like when you are international companies that are working on the different time zones and so on, you can just skip the meetings, get a brief summary what was discussed, then onboarding, offboarding process for people. So if you have somebody new, it doesn't need to spend anymore 2 to 3 months to get familiar what's going on about the code, documentation, and so on. You will just click few buttons, and in 1 week you are more or less knows what to do. Also, if you have a proper documentation, you can find something that to try to solve your problem. For example, how to access some stuff. So we already started to use something like that as a proof of concept. But yeah, so also Atlassian is working with that intelligence on that stuff, that you can just use the keywords. What's the project Omega? You just type Omega. That was presented during the Teams in Las Vegas. So you will just type the word, and then you will get all the answers about what you were searching for. You don't need to scroll through 1,000 of spaces in the documentation to find the answer. So, and the last but not least, I think important, especially in the Europe big companies, that are the language barriers sometimes. Mm-hmm. And with the AI and all these tools that you can use, like Google or any other tool for translating stuff. So we receive the tickets in different clients in Spanish, in French, and we don't care because it's automatically translated, right? And if it will be also translated and improved to the Jira environment, then it's another step. So reducing all kinds of barriers in communication. That's in the nearest future how the AI can be utilized.
Great, thank you guys. Well, guys, thank you very much for sort of walking us through everything from philosophy down to sort of future forward challenges. We've got several questions. I hope to get through as many as we can. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, though. Instead of necessarily asking each of you to answer all the questions, because I think then we'd get to fewer questions, I'll just pick one person from the panel to address each of these questions, or as many as we can get through, rather. And generally speaking, I'm going to take these in the order they were submitted. But let's start with one that is specific about Forge. Hubert, I'm going to come to you on this one, given that you did mention Forge. Guys, if we can, let's try to keep our answers pretty tight so we can get through as many questions as possible in the next 15 or so minutes. Hubert, in your experience, how does Forge enable builders to follow privacy as far as best practices are concerned?
Okay, that's a really good question. So thanks for that. So overall, if you are working with AI, you need to be aware, because overall you can build an app in Forge and you don't need to process the customer data because it's processed within the instance. But if you would like to use AI models, then you need to open the communication with external world, let's say like that. So Atlassian has a different kind of policies. So if you have your own REST API endpoint mostly, that's how it works, then you have a special, let's say, documentation or best practices. And then you have also the badge that you are compliant with the security stuff for the cloud as well. And just in the technical word, so if you are using AWS service, which is recommendation more or less, and you properly configure that, you following all the rules and you can execute the stuff. So for example, what was one of the key way of that development? So Atlassian has an integration of the SNCC. So if you have any vulnerabilities in your code, you directly get the ticket to solve them. But also if you send the data of to any other endpoints, like if you would like to send to OpenAI directly, then you need to notify the users about it, and they need to agree because they can see all the URLs where you send. But overall, as a developer, and if you would like to process and store the customer data, even though if you use Forge, you need to send them. So please follow. There are articles how to secure your stuff, and just use AWS in short. From my perspective, when you are like, of course, startup, as I said, if you grow, you can switch it, but at the beginning, just buy AWS server and then keep it there. That it will simplify your stuff.
Cool, thank you, Hubert. Here's one about large language models, LLMs. And this was submitted by Andre. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Andre. If we're discussing large language models, Andre's curious, are you using ready-to-use services such as OpenAI, or do you opt for self-hosted solutions like a fine-tuned Llama model? And why have you made the choice that you have, and is there a particular recommendation? Yov, I'm going to come to you on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give one side. Tyler probably has the other side, but I think for us it was about ease of use and acceleration. And so I think in the early stages, leveraging a model like OpenAI or Anthropic, and I think soon we'll see Google's models and other players come in, it's really a lot faster. They're generalized. And for all intents and purposes, like we use GPT-4 because it happens to be the top model, but give it a month or two and something else will be the top model. And so I think leveraging API just gives you a lot more flexibility. Now, I think the long term is open source, and we're seeing models. Even just yesterday, a new Llama model came out and is beating everyone. And so we're going to continue to see that growth. And so I foresee in the future is going to be open source. And, I think the power that you can get by training your own model using a really strong base like Llama, and whatever the next evolution of that will be, I think is kind of the future. But if you're getting going, and you're a small team, leverage an API. You're going to get really, really far and be comfortable with not having the perfect answer. Like, I think right now that's what you should expect. And the non-perfect answer is still way better than not having AI. And so, just take a little bit of risk.
I agree with you.
Thanks. Oh, cool. I was actually going to let you do the rebuttal, even though I said we'd only do one. But if you agree, even easier. Then we'll keep the rules of the road going. Let's keep going here. We've got just 10 minutes to go. Let me see one here. Here's a good one. And I think, Tyler, I'm going to come to you on this one. And this one builds nicely off of what you have mentioned. This was submitted by Rodrigo. Thank you for the question, Rodrigo. I heard you mention that ChatGPT is being used in your products. How do you balance the usage cost or the compute cost of ChatGPT with per user pricing in the Atlassian marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And so we do use ChatGPT in our LaunchNotes project. It's not in the Gravity app that we have on the marketplace. But I have a good understanding of the usage and cost structure of it. And honestly, I think for most use cases, you're not going to have a problem. ChatGPT, especially if you're using 3.5, which is perfectly reasonable, it can have great results depending on your use case. Is a reasonable, affordable thing. On the on-prem and hosted side, you can still get the same thing. I think you really just have to focus on scaling or using a service that has more of an auto scaling function for hosted models, and being ready to invest in having the baseline cost is much higher. But again, depending on your customer, they might need to have some kind of confidence that the data is not going to OpenAI or some other third party. So it's just a balance. But in general, getting back to the first question, that Yov's response I think is right on, right? You're trying to get to market fast, and you have a good understanding of who your customers are. I think GPT or Claude or any of those is the right choice, because you can just get out there and test your ideas.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And one thing I would add, and I fully admit I am probably the least technical person on the call today, but if history serves us right, the compute cost will go down, and it will certainly get cheaper, probably incrementally at first, but then exponentially, probably very quickly. I have no prediction on the timeline there, but I think if you're thinking about not just building a single marketplace app, but really sort of building a company and scaling it, that is certainly something to keep in mind as well. Let's keep us moving here.
Maybe I can give my 2 words about the topic, because it's exactly the topic that we discussed yesterday within my team, because we are releasing the integration of Dr. for Jira with the ChatGPT. So I really like to work as I'm engineer. I really like to work with the numbers. So around 1,500 calls to REST API costs $1. And so we were thinking about how we ensure that our user will not spam the button with calls. Of course, there are many ways to restrict that in the Forge. So we were thinking about doing something similar as an automation if it will be needed. So that's important. So because automation also has a limit 1,000 of calls per one user. And it's something new, right? So we are thinking about adding the counter if it will be needed. Also, we need to think about if you would like to provide the free instance for 0 to 10 users, because the calls will still cost. But overall, 1,500 calls, of course, based on idea, it's a lot. And $1 for 1,500 calls should not be that issue. But if you will ask me in the 3 months, I will give you the proper numbers in our spreadsheet. But exactly, we did that investigation yesterday with my team. But as you, Philip, mentioned, it will go down the pricing.
Yeah, thanks for the additional color, Hubert. I appreciate it. Got time for a few more. This is a question that Ostap asked. I've reworded it a little bit, hopefully for clarity, but thank you for the question, Ostap. Let me preface before I say the question that any answer that is about to be given is not considered legal advice and is simply the perspective of an individual person. But Yov, I'd like to come to you for this one. As an app vendor, what do you consider to be the best practice for requesting user consent to send data from the instance to a service like ChatGPT? Do you ask for consent for every user? Is it covered under privacy policies or your end user license agreement? I'm just kind of curious. You don't have to necessarily go into super specifics, but how do you make sure that that is something you've considered and is presented to the customer and the user?
Yeah, I think, the big thing is transparency. And so making sure that you've got your terms of service, they're posted everywhere available. You've got your privacy policy. Something that we've added to our site that has been really helpful is we've added a whole security center. We're leveraging a tool called SafeBase, which has kind of a freemium model. And it just makes it much easier to just be transparent about how you handle data, how you deal with the data, what data you have. And so, I would say don't try and hide it. Don't try and have, conversations about, oh no, we're not doing it when you really are. Just be fully transparent about the risks and what data you have, and then how you deal with it, and I think consent is key. You want people to make sure that they're agreeing to your privacy policy, make sure that you are covering AI, make sure that you have your legal team review it. But just make sure that it's available everywhere that it needs to be. It's just not worth the risk associated with it. I think in this modern age, especially with how people think about AI, you kind of want to button all that up.
Awesome. Thank you, Yo. To help round us out, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and move away from sort of, product specific questions. And I'm going to move to a question that Matt submitted. Thank you, Matt, for the question. Matt's question is, since this is an Atlassian Ventures event, I'd be curious to hear from the speakers how being a part of the Atlassian Ventures portfolio has helped accelerate your companies beyond simply the funding. If it's okay with everyone, maybe very quick sort of lightning answers, 30 seconds each or so, and then I should have time to get to one more. If we can keep the answers short, that would be great. Hubert, I'll go to you with this one first.
Okay, so it was a huge change for me, right? So after winning the Codegeist, I started to have a discussion with Atlassian Venture and of course with you, Philip. And then we said, okay, you have a nice idea, you have nice, let's say, a proof of concept, how we can bring it in the proper way to the market that other people can utilize your tool to help them with their stuff. And of course, the development is expensive everywhere, all over the world, and you need the time. And also you need to focus on the new stuff. So that was a huge change for me. So I have to establish the company. I started to hire people. As you can see with AI, it's a difficulty, as Yov and Tyler already said. You need to spend on the security money. You need to spend on the legal stuff to discuss about all this paperwork and so on. Everything costs. So without being Atlassian Venture, it either would not help us to be where, I'm sure about it. We would never be where we are. We would never have the product on the marketplace in that shape which we have right now. So it's really jeopardized the way my career, and also that helped to push to the market the product.
Awesome.
And further development, of course.
Cool. Thanks, Hubert. Tyler, I'll come to you, and then Yov, you can round us out, and then I'll sort of close us out with some closing remarks.
Yeah, I think I get a monthly call with Phil now, which I look forward to. But we, the growing network of companies and teams like Yov's and Hubert's is awesome, and having access to that has been incredible. I'd say that finally, having a strong strategic partnership with Atlassian, especially as we continue to integrate our products. Just having somebody that picks up the phone and says, I have somebody that I can put you in touch with, who's working on this area of Jira, and to help you better understand it has been enormously valuable for us.
Awesome. And Yov, if you don't mind.
I mean, Phil is great. At the end of the day, Atlassian has been an amazing partner. Ultimately, we're building a product that is supporting Jira and Atlassian users. And I think that Atlassian team takes each one of their partners really seriously. Their success is driven by our success. And I would say that, they're one of our top partners, and, just a great team to work with that really cares about kind of the shared success. And, they're available and supportive. And, I think it's a really amazing partnership.
Well, thank you guys. That means a lot. We are right at time, but if I could ask everyone for maybe 30 more seconds, I did just also want to touch on one quick question from an Atlassian perspective. There was a question about plans to make Atlassian intelligence accessible through APIs for third-party apps that don't necessarily have a built-in AI. And I just want to address that real quick and just let everyone know that Atlassian is still in the process of exploring how AI and Atlassian intelligence can be best leveraged across our app ecosystem. And we are seeing some exciting signals so far. It is a little too early today to make any predictions and share anything in detail, but I just wanted to address the question and say thank you for submitting it and let you know that it is definitely an ongoing process at Atlassian. And with that, I do want to thank everyone for joining today, and most specifically, I want to thank Yo, Hubert, and Tyler for sharing your thoughts. These insights have been very valuable, and I hope they've been valuable for the audience and anyone who's considering building an AI-powered app for the Atlassian marketplace. A great way to get your feet wet with AI app building is to join our AI hackathon, Codegeist, Unleashed, which is running through October 24th. If you have not already done so, we encourage you to register and be part of this AI revolution within the Atlassian ecosystem. The prize pool for Codegeist Unleash includes up to or an aggregate of $170,000 plus in cash prizes, as well as a trip to Amsterdam to compete live at the Unleash stage showcase. There will be a link in the chat for you to check out, and we can follow up with additional information as well. Again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of your morning, afternoon, or evening to join us. Special thanks to our panelists, and I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day or evening. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Happy coding, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.